Hello, my name is Rickard, and in this tutorial, I'm going to show you how to create this stretched pixel effect in Photoshop. I recently saw this poster for an episode of Black Mirror called Common People, and it uses a really cool stretch effect in the poster. And what I want to do in this tutorial is show you how to recreate that inside of Photoshop. If you want to follow along, I have included all the images that I use in a link in the description of this video. Go ahead, download those, and then let's dive into Photoshop. All right, so this is the poster that we're going to be recreating here. Obviously, we don't have the same images, but we want to create something in this style. And particularly the effect that I want to recreate is this kind of stretching of our character. And I like this little detail where his arm is holding her, that stretching is not happening. The other thing that I want to kind of replicate here is this lit edge, which helps separate him from the background. All right, so with all that in mind, let's go ahead and close this. I'm going to create a new file, and I want to create a file that's 2000 pixels wide by 3000 pixels tall. I'm going to set this to 72 dots per inch or pixels per inch, and let's change the color profile here to working sRGB. All right, next, let's go ahead and put in some guides. I'm going to go to New Guide Layout. And when you open this, you'll probably see something like this. I'm going to change the columns to 4 with no gutter. And then I'm also going to set the rows to 4 with no gutter. And that'll just give us some guides here, a basic grid. So as I place things, you know where to put them too. All right, next thing we're going to do is our red background. So first, let's go ahead and select our two red colors. First one is going to be C7C061A. So kind of a dark red color. And then for our background color, we're going to use a very similar color, but just a little bit lighter. So that's going to be CB0F25. All right, and then we're going to go onto our gradient tool. I want to make sure this is a linear gradient, and I want it to go from the foreground to the background. And I want to use a gradient, not a classic gradient, so that it makes a layer as we do this. And really here, all I'm going to do is kind of make a diagonal from this bottom right to about the middle of the file here. So something like that. We can call this red background. Okay, and then the next thing we need to do is pull in our kissing subject. So let's do File, Open, and in the Assets folder, I've downloaded a bunch of photos from Unsplash of couples kissing. Out of all of these, I think this one here, the Toa one, works the best. So I'm going to open that. One problem that I do see right away is that we don't have a right edge here. So essentially, she's going to be the male equivalent or the male character in this poster, and that she's going to be holding on to him while he fades away. So I need to have a finished edge on this. I can't just have it bleed off. So to fix that, we're going to go to our crop tool, put this on generative expand, and then kind of go to the right here until where this jacket would no longer be showing. So probably somewhere around there, and let's hit that check mark. Now this is going to generate the additional content for us. And one thing that I have noted on this is that there's a few AI tools that work with or without any kind of errors. So the remove tool and the generative expand do well at generating content for you, even if the generative fill tool or this tool here will give you an error. So that's why we're using this as opposed to the generate this image, because it's got two people kissing for some reason that violates the Adobe guidelines. So let's look here, which of these options is best. And I think the one that cuts off the jacket the most there like that is the one I prefer. So I'm going to select both of these layers and then do Command E to merge them. Next, I want to get rid of her nose ring. Just with how small it is, it kind of just looks like she has something in her nose. So for that, I'm going to use the remove tool. Let's go ahead and zoom in here. And I'm going to paint just over the ring there. Now you can see it's kind of got this dark shadow that doesn't really make sense. We can try to fix that like this, but it's not really doing the trick. Let's go into our good old-fashioned stamp tool. I'm going to right mouse click, and here if we show our brush strokes, I want to use one of these soft brushes like this, and I want to set the flow to something low like 30. Then I'm going to hold down Option or Alt, click here, just kind of paint this area here like that. All right, I'm also going to get rid of this little spot right there. And then the other thing is you can see that this kind of area of her nose is just too red, and it makes her look like she has a cold. So to fix that, I'm just going to grab my lasso tool, do a really rough selection of this red area here, and then go down here to selective color. With selective color, I can target individual colors. I want to target the red and take down the magenta and then also the yellow. And that looks about right. We are seeing this line here. To fix that, I'm going to select the mask in my properties here and just add a feather until I don't see it anymore. So there you can see the before and after. That looks a lot better. Let's go ahead and merge this too with Command E. All right, before cutting them out, I do also want to get rid of these spots on his jacket. I could use the remove tool, but I'd rather just use the spot healing brush. It's much faster, and for something like this, it's going to do just as good a job as your remove tool. And let's target all these, and I'm going to kind of fast forward through this. Okay, pretty happy with that. The next thing we're going to do is cut them out of the background. For that, I can go to my object selection tool and just make a rectangular selection around them. And then we can go into the select and mask workspace. Let's go ahead and make this a stronger contrasting color. And let's turn it up just a bit. And then we can zoom in here and see how good of a job it did. You can see it's done a pretty good job, although it missed a few things here. So maybe what we'll do here is go to our edge selection brush, kind of paint over these hairs here, and then also run it just down here. See if we can get any more of this into our selection there. And I'll probably go here where her hair meets the background. And maybe here as well. Okay, that looks good. We are having a little bit of this hat here that's not in the selection. I'll just go to my standard brush tool and add that back into our selection here. All right, that looks good. And down here, I want the output to be to a selection. What I'm going to do is make a copy of this, add a mask to it, and then we'll convert this to a smart object. And we can call this subjects original. And then with my move tool, I'm just going to drag this into here. The next thing I need to do is place it correctly. So I'm going to do Command T for transform, kind of rotate this. Basically want her face to be right about here. Let's go ahead and start making this smaller. And I want this hand here to be kind of farther away so that his head is creating a color streak while the back end of him here is creating a separate color streak. So we have that effect of her hand holding a part of him back like we saw in the original poster. So something like this. And it's kind of falling off the bottom here more than I wanted to, so let me try making it just a bit smaller here. I do want to see a bit of the bottom of her jacket here, but not too much. All right, good enough. Okay, so now the next thing we're going to do is stretch him. And to do that, before I do that, I want to cut out any part of this that I'm not using. And the reason for that is when you go into the Liquify tool, it treats your entire smart object rather than just the part that's inside your canvas. So something like this, it's really hard to see what's happening. I can't see my edges anymore. So what I'm going to do is first just go here with my rectangular marquee and then do Command J. That'll kind of crop this out, and I still have my original here if I need it. We'll call this subjects cropped. I'm going to convert this to a smart object, and then we'll go to Filter, Liquify. And here, what I want to do first is freeze the parts of the image that I don't want moving, and that's specifically her hand and his face. So let's go ahead and zoom in a bit here, and I've noticed that at the zoomed out scale, the Liquify tool is very slow on my computer, but as soon as I zoom in like this, it starts to work okay. So this brush here is our freeze brush. Let's go ahead and select that and just paint over her hand. All right, and then we're also going to paint over his face here so that this part of his face does not move. Okay, and then I'm going to go to this tool, which allows me to push pixels around. We can start with kind of the broader strokes over here. I'm just going to push this up. And I'm trying to push this up as straight as I can, meaning no angles. Okay, and then I'm going to make my brush much smaller and then do the other side here. And I want to make sure I grab his skin, not his hat, because I want this part to have his skin color in it. So I'm going to push from here and then kind of start pushing up like this. And now we can make our brush bigger and keep pushing this up. I'm going to make my brush even bigger. Okay, I'm happy with that. I'll probably go a little smaller here. For now, I'm going to take this, which erases that freeze, and just erase it right here so I can get a little bit more stretch right there. Go back onto this tool here and stretch this part up a little more as well. I just want a little more color in my stretch, basically. And that does the trick. I'll do one just to try to straighten out as much as I can and then hit OK. Okay, that's looking good. Next, I'm going to go onto my rectangular marquee and make a selection from about here to there. And then I'm going to do Command J to put that on its own layer, then do Command T for transform, and then hold down Shift and then drag this up to the top of the frame. I'm going to go ahead and do Command semicolon to temporarily turn off my guides. And that's looking really good. It's got the right effect. He's kind of bleeding off. I'm not seeing any seams there. So the next thing I'm going to do is take both of these layers and do Command E to merge them. We're going to call this subject. Okay, so now we're going to start doing some tweaks on this, get it looking a little bit better. And first thing I'm going to do is we'll just do a little hair correction here. And for almost all these layers, I'm going to clip them to the layer below so that they're only applying to our subject. And to do that, I'm going to hold down Option and click between the two. I'm going to go in here and I just want to kind of paint these hairs the darkest color here so that they don't look so cut out. So something like that does the trick. And that looks better. Okay, next I want to add a darker blue color to her sweater here because that's where I'm going to put the title of the film. And right now the title is white and it's going to compete with this. Also, if we look at our original poster, it's got some nice blue color in there. So we're going to add that both to the sweater and then also to the jackets. So for the sweater, let's go ahead and select our subject layer. And then let's go on to our quick selection and just kind of paint over this sweater here. And that looks pretty good. Let's hit Q. And if you want to change the color of your quick mask, go to Channels, double click on the quick mask, and you can change the color here to something that contrasts better with your image. Okay, so with the quick mask, I can paint with black and white what I want or don't want in my selection. So here, any part that's not the sweater, I'm just going to paint out. I want the entire edge here. Make sure I don't have a little halo there. Because I'm going to be clipping this to the layer, it doesn't really matter that it goes over the edge there. Okay, good enough. So now what we're going to do is hit Q again to get out of quick mask mode, and I'm going to go here to my curves and I'm going to clip it again. You can do this option and do that, but with adjustment layers they give you this handy little icon here that allows you to clip it. All right, and here I want to pull this down, make it quite a bit darker. Then I'm going to go into red, make it more cyan. The opposite of red is cyan. Also going to go to my green and add some magenta to make this more of a blue color. And then if I go to my blue, I can push that up just a bit and then probably make this slightly darker. So something like that. All right, next what we're going to do is a selective color. So let's go here, selective color. And I showed you how to use this with the red, but what we're going to do now is use it on our neutrals and our blacks. So first let's go ahead and clip it again, and then let's go to our blacks. I want the blacks to be more bluish, so I'm going to add cyan, maybe a bit of magenta as well, and then if I take out some yellow, it'll push it toward more of a blue color. All right, we're going to do a similar thing to the neutrals, not quite as strong because neutral does affect the other colors to one degree or another as well. So we have to be careful about not overdoing it in the neutrals. All right, that looks good. The next thing I want to do is a color balance to just push a little more red into our highlights here. So let's go to color balance. Again, I'm going to clip it. I'm going to push the midtones a little bit toward red. It's going to help integrate this into the background. And then in the highlights, I'm going to do even more red, a bit of yellow. And then in the shadows, I'm going to kind of do the opposite. I'm going to push it towards cyan and blue, but not too much blue because that's making it darker than I want. So maybe something like this. Okay, and then the other thing is we are losing a bit of detail in the shadows. One thing you can always try is go up to Image Adjustments and Shadow Highlights. Now that's going to pull in a whole bunch of detail from your shadows. I would say this is far too much, but let's take this down and let's try maybe even 5%. So there's a before and after. And I think that's doing a good job of just getting a little more detail into it. It also just kind of gives it a little bit more of an illustrated poster look to it. So let's hit OK there. Okay, the next thing I want to do is kind of create this bottom highlight. So to do that, I'm going to do a little trick. I'm going to hold down Command, click on this, and then create a new layer, and I'm going to call this Edge Lighting. I'm going to fill this with black, and then do Command D to deselect, and I'm going to take the fill on this down to 0. And then the next thing I'm going to do is go into my layer styles and go to Inner Shadow. And if we reset this to default, generally what the inner shadow does is it casts a shadow inside your object instead of outside. But we're going to use this to create our edge lighting. So I'm going to put it on screen instead. I'm going to select this kind of skin tone color and make it brighter. And then I'm going to turn off the global light, and I want this coming in from the bottom so that it's hitting this edge of her. And then what we can do is increase the size of it and then also the opacity. And you can see now that's starting to have that effect that we want here. So probably about there. Now the beauty of inner shadow is I can make another copy of it and then change the size of this one, kind of create a more realistic shadow effect. And for this one, I might make it even more kind of skin tony color there. So something like that. All right, then the other thing I'm going to do is go to blending options and turn on this layer mask hides effect. And then the other thing I want to do is we have some spots here like the texture on the sweater or some of these creases on the jacket that go to black, and even if light was hitting it, it would still be black. So we can kind of trick that by going in here and just pulling this up until it's not really affecting those blacks and we get that detail back in there. Now right now it's very sharp, so what we have to do is hold down Option, kind of drag these points away from each other a bit. But something like that looks nice. Let's hit OK. I'm going to add a mask to this, go onto my gradient tool. I want to make sure I'm on foreground to transparent, and I want to put this on classic gradient. And now what I'm going to do is basically get rid of this inner shadow everywhere but right here along this edge. So there you go. That's putting it just where I want it. Probably even can get rid of it by her chin with a black brush. So just like that. Okay, so then the next thing we're going to do is another trick to make this even stronger. So I'm going to go down here and add a gradient map. And this gradient map is going to go from black to the skin tone. Now, unfortunately, I can't really select skin tones because everything is black and white. So what we'll have to do here is probably select these skin tones ahead of time. So let's go to our eyedropper, select that light skin tone here. And then maybe for our back color, I'm going to select the slightly darker skin tone here. So we've got our two skin tone colors here. Probably make the light one a bit lighter. And now if we add a gradient map, it's going to take those and apply them to our gradient map like so. And then what I'm going to do is take this and just push it really to about there and add a black one here, because I really just want this color in these highlights. So something like this. And then we're going to put this on screen. And you can see the effect that that's having on those edges there. It also gives the whole thing a little bit more of that kind of postery look to it. So I'm kind of liking that. I think this might just be a little bit too light. So I'm going to push these toward their color and also make them a little bit darker. So something like that. Oops, too much on that one, I think. Okay, and then in the mask, we're going to hide this from most of the image. So again, on a classic gradient black to transparent, and then on the mask, I'm going to kind of fade it. So it's just like this. Mostly in this part here. And then maybe I can even take this and take the density down so that I have it a little bit on the skin, but not much. Probably right around 64%. Looks quite nice. All right, so having done all that, the last thing I want to do here is just add some noise on top of everything so it feels like this all belongs together or was taken with the same camera. So to do that, what we'll do is add a new layer. I'm going to fill this layer with a neutral gray, so 0. Whoops. We're going to make this the hue 0, the saturation 0, and the brightness 50. And then Option Delete or Alt Backspace to fill. I'm going to go to Camera Raw Filter, which is my favorite filter for creating grain because I have this roughness control. So let's zoom in here, see how that's looking. Looking quite nice. Let's hit OK. And I'm going to put this on linear light. Now you can see it's very strong. And linear light is one of these blending modes where opacity and fill have a different function. So if I just take the opacity down, it's basically creating a rendered version of my film grain on top of my image and just decreasing the opacity of that. Whereas decreasing the fill decreases the actual intensity of the effect. So this is the one you want to adjust, and even at 30%, that's having a really nice effect there. Okay, then the next thing we're going to do is add some titles to this. So I'm going to do Command semicolon to get our guides back. And for this, I'm going to go onto my type tool. I'm going to be using an Adobe font called New Haas Grotesque. And let's go ahead and select the medium version of this. We're going to make this 194 pixels, and I want it to be white. And then I'm going to click right here in the center, and we're going to do common, common, All right, I'm going to select all, open up my guides. I don't want this to be on, and I want this to be 194. There you go. And I also want this to be -40. And let's make this 162. That's our leading. And then we're going to hit return here and type in people. I'm going to move this so that it's right on that guide there. And then I'm going to hold down Option, make a copy of this, select it again, and we'll put in our actress name here, Rashida Jones. I'm going to select all, change this to -20, select this to 74, and then in the original poster, the first name was slightly less bold than the last name, so we'll go ahead and do that as well. And then we'll put this kind of directly above here, so right about there. Hold down Option, and then let's go ahead and do the actor's name, which is Chris O'Dowd. And let's turn off our guides. And there you have it. That is how you create that kind of stretch effect. And you can do this with pretty much any photo. Once you know the technique, you can now use this for any kind of other effect where you want this stretching of pixels. So there you have it. That's how you recreate that effect in Photoshop. And obviously you can do this for any other type of image or any kind of effect where you want to stretch pixels. Now, if you enjoyed this and learned something, please subscribe to my channel, turn on notifications, leave a like. And also, if you're interested in learning about Photoshop, learning how to create posters, key art, book covers, and so forth, check out nuclei.com. I sell professional training and tools for Photoshop artists and designers. So check that out. Otherwise, here's some other tutorials that you can check out. And I'll see you next time.